Good afternoon, Drew Holley with BIS, one of the partners here. We're an employee benefit and business insurance agency right here in Metro Atlanta, and this is America's most boring podcast. Today we're going to talk about COBRA, okay? What is COBRA? Well, COBRA was a law passed by the Congress federally. I believe it was in the 90s, that essentially said that if you work for an employer that has a group health insurance plan, you have rights to extend that coverage when you leave. And a lot of this was because back at the time, there was pre-existing conditions in the marketplace. And so if you left your employer and then you tried to go even work for a new employer or get an individual coverage, and if you had any kind of lapse, you could get hit with the pre-existing. So the intent of this was if you're an employee, you work for a company, it is important to know that this is not every company's size. Okay, it is 20 plus employees, okay, and there's different ways to define that, 20, part-time, full-time, all that. So think of this, if you're a 20 plus employer, I'm going to abbreviate employer with my terrible handwriting, you have to, if you offer health insurance, offer COBRA rights to your employees, meaning when they leave, voluntarily or involuntarily. Now, if you're an employer, you do not have to continue to pay for their full cost of health care. In fact, whatever the gross cost for your health insurance, and this is a dirty secret for a lot of you employees that might be listening to this, is a lot of people say, COBRA's expensive, COBRA's expensive. Well, it's no different than the price that your employer's paying. The difference is your employer was subsidizing all or a big portion of that cost. You're just seeing the full bill, and maybe you did or didn't appreciate your former employer and how much they were actually contributing. And when you get that sticker cost of that COBRA, you're really just getting, wow, I didn't realize health insurance was that expensive. Yep, that's what it is. And you're allowed as a former employee to extend and keep that coverage at the full price. And the employer, whether they administer COBRA or they hire a third-party person to do it, can charge a surcharge of that premium plus 2%, max 2%, and then you can stay on it for up to 18 months, okay? Now, most people don't do the full 18 months. Maybe they go in transitions from jobs. It might take it a couple months. Depending on the situation, can keep it for up to 36 months. So it's important to know your rights. And if you're an employer, if you're 20 plus and you're not doing this, you're out of compliance. So you would need a broker and advisor to make sure they handle that. It's basic stuff if you're in the insurance industry, if you're a broker and advisor. If you're an employer that's below 20 employees and you're getting ready to go 20 and you're not sure if the broker advisor knows what they're doing in that, there's lots of great brokers in town. They all do this. It's the standard operating procedures. Again, BIS could help. Last thing I would mention, for groups under 20, what happens? Do you have any rights as an individual? Well, it depends on the state you live. So in Georgia, they call it Georgia state continuations. So if you're an employee from 1 to 19, your employer happens to offer health insurance, Georgia simply says, hey, it doesn't have to extend for 18 months. That's a federal law. But Georgia says, hey, employers, you need to offer that for 3 months for the coverage. So that's important to know. Without getting too wonky, there are some products on that Georgia state continuation that don't necessarily have to meet that requirement, but most employers and carriers do it anyways. So just to recap it, COBRA, federal employer, 20 employees, you can keep that coverage. It's going to be pricey because it doesn't have your employer contribution, but it could be a good stopgap until you get coverage elsewhere. And these are all group plans offered through your employer. These are not personal plans. Thank you. I'm Drew Holley with BIS.